The Road Not Taken, How the West Could Have Stopped Hitler. Prologue, The Shadow of Appeasement. The year is 1933. Adolf Hitler has just risen to power in Germany, his rhetoric filled with promises of national revival, territorial expansion, and the eradication of the cancer of communism and Judaism. The Western powers, America, Britain, and France, watch with a mixture of unease and hope. Unease, because Hitler's ideology is clearly dangerous; hope, because they believe that perhaps this man, once in power, will moderate his views. They are wrong. What follows is a dark alternate history, a tale of missed opportunities, moral failures, and the catastrophic consequences of appeasement. This is the story of how Hitler could have been stopped early, had the West acted decisively. Now before we move on, please help a small channel grow. Please like and subscribe. If you have any comments, good or bad, leave them below. Back to the story. Chapter 1, The Rhineland Gambit, 1936. In March 1936, Hitler orders the reoccupation of the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone under the Treaty of Versailles. The German military, still in its infancy, is woefully unprepared for a confrontation. General Ludwig Beck, chief of the German General Staff, later admits that had the French army intervened, the German forces would have been forced to retreat in humiliation. The French army, at the time, is vastly superior in numbers and equipment. Yet, France does nothing. Britain, under Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, urges restraint, fearing a new war. America, isolationist and distant, watches from across the Atlantic. But what if they had acted? In this alternate timeline, French Prime Minister Léon Blum, emboldened by secret intelligence revealing the true weakness of the German military, orders a mobilization of French forces along the German border. British Prime Minister Baldwin, pressured by a growing faction within his own party advocating for a firmer stance, agrees to support France. The United States, though still isolationist, issues a stern warning to Hitler, signaling that further aggression will not be tolerated. Faced with the prospect of a two-front war and the collapse of his regime, Hitler is forced to withdraw from the Rhineland. The German generals, already skeptical of Hitler's reckless ambitions, begin to plot against him. The Nazi regime, built on a foundation of lies and bluffs, begins to crumble. Chapter 2, The Austrian Anschluss, 1938. In our timeline, Hitler annexes Austria in March 1938 with little resistance. The West, still clinging to the policy of appeasement, does nothing. But in this alternate history, the West has learned its lesson. The reoccupation of the Rhineland has shown that Hitler can be stopped if met with force. When Hitler moves to annex Austria, the French and British governments issue an ultimatum: withdraw or face military action. The German military, still recovering from the humiliation of the Rhineland debacle, is in no position to fight a war. Hitler, realizing that his bluff has been called, is forced to back down. The Austrian government, emboldened by Western support, cracks down on Nazi sympathizers within its borders. The Anschluss is averted. Chapter 3, The Munich Betrayal, 1938. In our timeline, the Munich Agreement of September 1938 is the high watermark of appeasement. Britain and France, desperate to avoid war, allow Hitler to annex the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a large ethnic German population. Czechoslovakia, abandoned by its allies, is left defenseless. Hitler, emboldened by his success, soon occupies the rest of the country. But in this alternate history, the West has already shown that it will not be cowed by Hitler's threats. When Hitler demands the Sudetenland, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and French Premier Édouard Daladier refuse to capitulate. Instead, they issue a joint declaration: any attempt to annex Czechoslovak territory will be met with military force. Hitler, faced with the prospect of a war he cannot win, is forced to back down. The German generals, increasingly disillusioned with Hitler's reckless policies, begin to conspire against him. In early 1939, a coup led by General Ludwig Beck and other high-ranking officers succeeds in overthrowing the Nazi regime. Hitler is arrested and executed for treason. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. With Hitler gone, the Nazi regime collapses. The German military, now under the control of more moderate leaders, begins the process of democratization. The West, having learned the dangers of appeasement, takes a more active role in European affairs. The League of Nations is reformed, and a new system of collective security is established to prevent future aggression. But this is not a happy ending. The collapse of the Nazi regime does not erase the deep-seated anti-Semitism and nationalism that fueled its rise. In Germany, far-right groups continue to agitate against the new democratic government. In Eastern Europe, tensions between ethnic groups remain high. The Soviet Union, emboldened by the West's newfound assertiveness, begins to expand its influence. And yet, the world is spared the horrors of World War II. The Holocaust is averted. Tens of millions of lives are saved. The West, having learned the lessons of appeasement, is better prepared to confront the challenges of the 20th century. Epilogue: The cost of inaction. In our timeline, the policy of appeasement allowed Hitler to grow stronger, emboldened by each concession. The German military, initially weak and ill-prepared, was given the time it needed to rearm and expand. Hitler's lies and bluffs, his promises of peace, his claims that he had no further territorial ambitions, were taken at face value, even as he plotted further aggression. The cost of inaction was staggering. World War II claimed the lives of over 60 million people. The Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews, remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. The world was forever changed by the failure to stop Hitler early. In this alternate history, the West acted decisively, and the world was spared the worst of the 20th century's horrors. But it is a reminder of the dangers of appeasement, of the cost of failing to confront evil when it first arises. It is a lesson we must never forget. The end. Please like and subscribe.